We are here to celebrate the life of William Harold Moon. My name is Steve Hobbs, and I've been asked to do some moderation at this event, and I am pleased and honored to have the opportunity to do so. The weather is what we have to live with, isn't it? So if you need to stand and move around to try to stay warm, I would say do that as long as you don't get in the way of Tim and his camera over there.
If you do, smile.
That's right. I really can't think of a better way to get this underway, to set a tone, than to be able to be wrapped in the voice of Mr. Russell Joel Brown. Russell?
Thank you. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
He said he might do something else again later. Two or three or maybe more of us are going to do some reflections and tributes with respect to our beloved Harold Moon. And I have the honor of starting that off. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Steve Hobbs, and because of a coin flip that took place in Athens, Georgia, back in 1972, Harold Moon hired me, fresh out of the Army, to teach a temporary 9-month course out at Fort Gordon, actually, under the auspices of Augusta College. And somehow that evolved into a career for me, and I am so glad it did. Before I say anything else, I must acknowledge that Harold would not have been the outstanding person that he was had it not been for the fact that he came from some really good stock. And if he had not associated himself with some really good stock. So I'm happy to be here with you guys. Good stock. Some people somehow seem to make more of a difference than most others. Harold Moon was such a person. During his time, he wore lots of hats: son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, teacher, friend, clinician, administrator, athlete, educator, mental health advocate, community activist. You get the idea. While he was those things, he was more than just the simple sum of them. One of those extra ingredients that Harold possessed was what could be termed down-home values. Values such as hard work, personal responsibility, honesty, sincerity, and fair play. Harold would not want us to spend too much time fawning over him, but I would like you to have some appreciation for his contributions beyond what you, especially as family, would be aware of. As was mentioned in his obituary, Harold was among a small group of individuals who helped establish a community mental health center here in Augusta, which at the time was the largest city in the entire United States without one. Later, shortly after that actually, it was Harold's leadership that established a master's program in clinical psychology at Augusta College. And at that time, that was the only full-time, daytime graduate program at the institution. He was one of the founders of the Yancey Mental Health Golf Tournament, which has provided financial assistance to local mental health groups now for almost 3 decades. As president of the National Honor Society, called Psychi, Honor Society in Psychology, he led the process of relocating that organization's national headquarters to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and helping to put the organization back on a sound financial footing. He brought about similar significant change to the Southeastern Psychological Association as its president. The results of his leadership in each of these areas and others continue to make a positive difference to this very day. As most everyone here knows, Harold was hired away from Auburn University, where he was on the faculty, by Augusta College to chair its psychology department. Quickly recognizing his leadership skills, the institution soon made him an academic dean. Such administrators are often tasked with enforcing rules and regulations. Harold did so, appropriately so, yet he was always willing to at least consider and to sometimes bend the rules and or make exceptions. I found Harold's approach to be refreshingly straightforward. He would simply query, is what I'm being asked to do educationally defensible or educationally beneficial? It was for him a clear rule of thumb. If such a case could be made, the request would be endorsed. If not, the rule stood and an exception was not granted. Put another way, Harold had a strong moral and educational compass, whereas many academic administrators only had at their disposal a rule book. Harold set an example for students and faculty members alike. He was a man of high ethical and educationally focused standards. Harold finished his academic career by returning to the classroom, and I was now his boss rather than him being mine. We agreed that his knowledge and expertise would be best used in teaching and mentoring graduate students. In that small group discussion environment, Harold was able to significantly influence and prepare many budding professionals for what they would soon be facing upon graduation. Just as a complete aside, I just got a call this last week from one of his former students who didn't even know he had passed. She's a much respected professional at the University of Virginia now. she had to stop and call me back later to tell me what he had meant. Harold certainly did not fit the stereotype of an ivory tower academician. Those people are aloof, physically awkward, right? And lacking common sense. Aloof, not the social extrovert we all knew. Lacking common sense? Come on, he grew up on a farm. And not athletic? Well, Harold enjoyed sports and was quite athletic. In the early days of our time here together, he and I and a couple of other psychologists played tennis, where especially at the net, Harold had an unfair advantage with those long, gangly arms of his. As you probably know, Harold had played some semi-pro baseball in his younger days. And here in Augusta, he transitioned to playing on several different and very competitive softball teams. That included one sponsored by Dr. Bowden, who's back there, Dr. Bowden's church, the Church of the Good Shepherd. I don't think that playing on that church team ever got him into one of the worship services, but he actually did attend and participate in a few Sunday school classes as a result. When all of us continued to age and just couldn't run as fast anymore, golf entered the picture. Initially, Harold was part of a group of mostly university-related guys playing courses here and there and all over the region, from the mountains to the coast. And yes, it was Harold Moon who almost burned down a condo at Edisto Beach by too quickly lowering a basket of frozen French fries into boiling oil. Eventually, Harold began to mostly play his golf at the North Augusta Country Club. It was there that Harold's swing became infamous. There were many imitators, but no one could go through those gyrations and still connect with the ball as well as Harold Moon could. When the North Augusta Country Club closed, Harold spent his remaining years golfing at the River Golf Club. And it's there that he also got to be somewhat of a card shark. People felt comfortable confiding in Harold. Perhaps this was more evident in recent years with his golfing buddies there. On the course or over cards afterwards, they might joke with Harold about his swing, or a wayward shot, or a miraculously long putt that he had made for birdie. But later, it was not uncommon for one of them to take him aside or call him up for personal advice and input. He was a man to be trusted. So what was especially distinctive about this Harold Moon? Some of us might pick things like his unique golf swing, or his compassion for the mentally ill, maybe his accent and speech pattern, perhaps his handwriting, which I think Brian was trying to decipher some recently. For me, one thing would certainly be that he could laugh at himself as easily as anyone I have ever known. Also, he was comfortable being with anyone, regardless of his or her background, or status in life, or educational level, or political or religious inclinations. He was my mentor. He was my friend. He still is. Thanks for everything, Harold. May the full life that he led continue to be an inspiration and source of wonderful memories for us all, for all of our days. Amen. Now, we're going to have some opportunity for any others who might wish to say a few words, and I think, Brian, you may wish to come first.
Since Dad's passing, I have not thought much about the permanence of its death. I frequently find myself logging things in my head that I need to remember to tell him. Things on the radio or things I read in the paper. I've also thought that you don't truly become a man until your father dies. There's something comforting in knowing that he was always there, a safety net for bad decisions, or advice for preventing them. I was very fortunate to have had my dad for such a long time. There's those that don't. Shortly after Mom passed away and I separated from my then wife, we had the opportunity to be roommates for a short period of time. I was very grateful for this time just to talk about the everyday things that happen in your life. I wanted very much for Dad to be as proud of me as I was of him. He was such a pillar in his field and his community. My job connects me with people in this community of high political and social and educational standing, and I was often asked if I was related to Harold Moon when dealing with these clients, and all of them always had kind words to say about what a great man he was and how honored I should be. I was honored. His reputation was stellar. We didn't make a decision to have a ceremony like this until recently, and Steve and I worked several days on his obituary, and I considered myself off the hook for remembrances outside of my thoughts. My wife, who's been a rock through all those emotions I've been dealing with and details that need attending to, she knows that I'm horrible about getting anything done away from work. She was prodding me to think about things I may want to say at his service, and I stopped the conversation because I didn't want to deal with it at the time. This caused me to try and think of answers to the questions while my mind was quiet. She asked me what my greatest moment was. I was a handful as a teenager and college student, to say the least. I made decisions that cost my parents money, me money, and probably should have landed me in jail a few times. After my freshman year in college and very few credits on my transcript, I decided I needed to be on my own and moved out into a world of financial independence. 8 years later, after many drop classes and multiple major changes, I was able to get enough credits for a BS in business from Augusta College. With Dad being on the faculty at the time, he was allowed to give me my diploma. As a father of the son I am now, I can only imagine how this made him feel. Other moments blend together, just knowing he was there for me with unconditional love and advice that was always spot on. We often ate lunch on Wednesdays with my father-in-law and Steve Hobbs in recent years just to discuss current events, home repairs, or sports. The lunches stopped with COVID, and we didn't get together as much. He was very excited to become a grandfather and wanted to be called Papa, as we called his dad when we were little. Dad's grandfather lived to be 101 and was an integral part of his growing up. Dad always made sure to tell us stories of growing up on the Moon Dairy Farm, not because he was reminiscing, but because the world would never be that way again, and we needed the knowledge of how things were. He told one about a year ago that I had never heard before. They had a rabid bull on the farm, and this was at lunch and just out of the blue, but they had a rabid bull on the farm that the county vet wanted to see, but it escaped the barn and had to be put down before the vet arrived. And just as casually as he could, the next sentence out of Dad's mouth was, "Do you know how much gasoline it takes to burn a 2,000-pound bull?" The carcass had to be destroyed so scavenger animals would not transmit rabies to other livestock. Things I learned from Papa that made me who I am. To play golf despite his swing. He was able to shoot his age several times only because he lived long enough. His love of dogs and their unconditional love. Rascal, Bandit, Ginger, and Buttercup. His love of food, especially scrambled dogs, his love of Mom and of Carolyn, how to plant a garden. I don't do this, but I'm grateful to know how to work a room and engage conversation with complete strangers. Another thing I don't do well, but he was a master, how to water ski. I was able to do it last summer just to prove to my children that I could. How to treat people decently. He was often the voice of reason at the golf course when arguments broke out. His love of knowledge and reading. Dad was able to attend a class one summer in the 80s on the campus of University of Southern California. He and Mom lived in the married student housing on campus, and he remembered that fondly and often talked about it. His love of family. He always reached out to his family and to me, my sister, even when we weren't the best family members. He never was pushy about what we needed to do. He taught me to pay my own way and the importance of saving for the future. Most importantly, he showed me through how he lived what an example of an extraordinary human being looks like. He will be missed.
Harold and I, of course, he's my brother, y'all. Anybody who doesn't know, Harold was my brother, and there were just the two of us, born to our wonderful parents who lived the example that they taught us about the things that matter most. I've learned a lot about my brother reading his obituary and his autobiography that I didn't know, a lot of things. Our daddy was one of 9 children, and our mother was one of 7. So we had a lot of extended family, even though our family was rather small compared to some families back in those days. But we had, most of our neighbors were kinfolk. We were blessed to have both sets of our grandparents until we were adults, which was unusual, and lots of aunts and uncles and cousins. So I know any of you have known Harold and had more than an hour's conversation with him, have heard some of the dairy farm stories, and both of them alluded to, Steve and Brian both alluded to being growing up on a dairy farm. We had quite a big operation back then for those days. Before milk had to be pasteurized, they had customers all over Columbus, Georgia, had 2 delivery trucks that took milk and about 6 milk products, butter and whipping cream and coffee cream and so forth, skim milk, buttermilk, so forth. Anyway, dairy and farming were hard. It was a hard life. I always felt sad for Daddy because he had to work 365 days a year because those cows had to be milked twice a day, 365 days. So Harold had a big taste of that. I think that was an incentive for him to get the great education he did so he could use his brain and his voice instead of his brawn. So I'm sure that had an influence. In spite of the hard life, it was a good life too. And we had some unique perks. Harold and I both learned to swim in a converted watering trough for livestock. Our granddaddy and probably my daddy and uncle, who were all partners in the dairy business, had a way to convert that concrete watering trough that you often saw watering troughs in old Western movies. But they were usually wooden, I think, and they were in the heart of town where people could water their horses when they came in, when that was the mode of transportation. But Harold and I learned to swim and dive in that pool, and I cannot remember, I'm not very good on dimensions, and so I would say it was somewhere between 12 by 12 or 14 by 14. And if you can picture us learning to swim and dive in that. It was, you had to dive very carefully since it was only about 4 feet deep. And anyway, it was a spring-fed pool. And many times we had a car full or a truck full of people to go over there and get in that swimming pool. It was like getting in the bathtub with about 5 more people or something. Anyway, we learned to roller skate in the milking barn because it was a concrete floor and there were alleys all down both sides and in the middle. And of course, that was not when the cows went there. When they cleaned up after milking, we could do that. And I learned to drive out in the cow pasture. because there were very few trees, you know. You might run into a cow sometime, but they weren't very hard to get along with. And Harold and I had our normal sibling spats when we were growing up, just like kids will do, and especially brothers and sisters. And sometimes in our adult life, we didn't see eye to eye on certain things, but we always managed to disagree without being disagreeable. And we kept that relationship going through all these years. Even though we lived a distance apart in different cities or sometimes different states. But we always had phone conversations at least once a week. He always wanted me to know what was going on in his life, bad or good, and I always felt the same with him. I had a great respect for him and love. During the pandemic, we have not seen each other for a year, and that added to my grief and my heartache in this situation, that I didn't get a chance to visit with him, and had some great visits at our house or his, and we tried to be here for each other's special occasions for weddings and retirement time and so forth, and I've gotten to know some of you good friends and family, thank goodness. We all needed this time, and I'm so glad that Brian felt the need, and he and Carolyn and Steve and all who had a part in making this happen, because we needed this togetherness and this closure. And I'm thankful that we could have that. And all of you who knew Harold well know what a people person he was. I told somebody, I said, my brother was a psychologist, but he was not quirky. He did not have those strange kind of things like some. He was just a down-to-earth, happy people person. He enjoyed life to the fullest, didn't he? And he loved his friends and family. He was always interested in what my family were involved in and how they were and so forth. So I thank you all for being here. And for those of you, and I know all of you did, in some type of relationship brought him companionship and joy. And I thank you for that. And I almost thought I wouldn't be able to do this after that first song. Started my tears to flowing, but thank you for listening and for being here and loving Harold.
Y'all covered a lot of things except for one. He was an amazing Uncle Harold. Yeah. And I think I speak for my sister Terry sitting right back there. We loved him a lot. He loved large. He was a large man, and he loved large, and he had a large, large heart. And I was telling them on the way here that we never lived in the same town, but he was a large presence in our lives. And now when they lived in Auburn, my sister and I would go over there and stay with them and spend the night. And we always played lots of games. I think that really is what instilled the love of games for me. We learned how to play Parcheesi. That was one of our all-time favorites, and I still love that game today. But I was thinking something my sister said to me after we got the phone call, and she said, Beth, he always seemed young to me. And he did. And, in your head that nobody's going to live forever. But he was one of those people in our heart that we thought would, because he loved life and he felt so much joy. And, he didn't always get home for Christmas, but he always, Carolyn knows that because she was part of it. He always made our birthday, Terry and I are a day apart, and he always made our birthday a priority. And if he wasn't there at Christmas, Mama planned our birthday meal around Harold and Carolyn coming to celebrate our birthday. He made us a priority. And he loved us well, and he always cared about what was going on in our lives. And thank y'all for being here. I know how much he loved y'all, family, his friends. And dear Lord, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to let the best of all go next, and that's my husband, Reggie, and he's going to put an exclamation on all of that. You want to stay?
You can. I mean, first of all, I want to say what an honor it is for me to stand here. And what Beth said and what everybody else, Steve, you've said. I mean, I really don't have to talk too much longer because all I had to do is say ditto. But my life with Uncle Harold, and that's what he was to me, was an uncle. And it spans over 47 years. Beth and I have been married 45. And then 2 of those years prior to that we were dating, and he was Uncle Harold. I mean, every time I met. And when I first met Harold, I mean, the things I knew right off the bat that we were going to have a great relationship. Auburn, baseball, Braves, golf, and beer. Old Milwaukee. And I guess it was probably, I was trying to figure when it started, but I think it was around 1980. I started coming over. Harold was just invited me, to come to the Masters. And everybody knows what these are. And if you've been to the Masters, you get, one of these. And I think I have something that resembles this. I think this came later on in the Masters time, but I have the ones that are the smaller programs and so forth from over the years. But I would always and I look forward to that because it was always in April, like we all know, but it was coming over and having that time to spend with Harold. And the first time I made that trip, naturally, when you first come to the Masters, and everybody that's ever been will reach down there and try to touch the grass to see if it's real, and all the beauty and the awe of the Masters. And that first time was like that for me. And it stayed that way every time I ever went back, year after year after year. But usually we would come over and we would go that Wednesday, we would go out to North Augusta to play golf, and we'd usually play in the barbecue group. And I knew right then, Harold, the relationship and the friends he had and the development of the way he cultivated friends, Steve, it was so amazing. And probably many of you play golf, but when you're able to spend 4 hours in a golf cart with somebody, you learn a lot about their life, and they learn a lot about your life and what you talked about and what you witnessed. And I think those times that we got to share together, on top of going back home after that and that night, being able to go to dinner with Carolyn and going to Calvert's or T-Bones or Reinhardt's or wherever we went, it was always an adventure. It was always something that was special. The conversations, and Harold loved his margaritas, and we would just have that time together. And like Beth said a while ago, and Betty and everybody that's spoken talked about how much he cared about family, and he always asked about that. And over the years, from Arsenal Way, sitting on the porch with Rascal and drinking, like you said, Old Mohawk or Pabst Blue Ribbon. And as the years went on, you knew that Harold was starting to get, develop a little taste. Then we went to Coors Light. And then the last trip over here, I remember being at Carolyn's. And Harold said, "You want a beer?" And I went in there and he said, "Here's a Stella." I said, "Harold, I mean, we have gone, but anyway, that's the way he was." And from that conversation, sitting there with them and sharing, we talked about everything. But that was Harold. To me, that was Harold. I've been over here when, I got to go watch him play softball, these early days. And what an athlete he was. He and my son, as he grew up, and he kept, I'm 6 foot or probably 5'11" now, shrunk an inch or so, but he was always growing and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and taller. And we always wondered where Ty, who's now 6'4" and about 220, where he got his height. And we all went back to Uncle Harold. Every time that question would be, he got that from Uncle Harold. But those were the things that I remembered the most. And the special thing that I want to say last in closing was, the Masters, it was a great event, but it was Harold's generosity and Harold making sure that you were able to do that. And I was able to bring friends over. I was been able to bring Jimmy over or Joe over. And Beth came one time. But that wasn't, I asked her every year, but she was always, "Well, you need to let so-and-so experience that," which I did. But just the thought of him wanting me to share that with somebody else. And the greatest thought I have of his kindness, generosity, is when I got to share that with my son, and bring him. And then he got to share that same thing with staying with them and all of that. But just that part of that, and to know that he had a part in that, I mean, it's deep in my heart. I'll always remember that. Not just the Masters. The Masters is the greatest thing, but I remember how Uncle Harold opened that door for me and for everybody that I was able to share that with. And the dinners, I mean, Molly and Brian, we got to share that. And the conversation, and it was always, like Beth said, it was always big. I mean, Harold was always, and the people he introduced me to in all those places we went, those are people that Brian was talking about that knew him, and they knew him, they knew Carolyn, they knew everybody that he talked about. And that was my love. And I was going to share this, but and these are quotes like that says about golf, and he loved that so much. And and this is Harold: "I play for fun, friends, exercise, and fresh air." And the last in closing, I mean, you can tell a lot about a person, even a total stranger, by playing a round of golf with him. And that was Harold. If you ever played with him, you had to, not look so much at his swing, but you had the greatest time of your life. And I know that's what my remembrance is how much fun I had with Uncle Harold.
Changed my life course by just seeing that. And then I said, "Well, I'm not a surgical scientist." He said, "You don't know you are until you try it. So try it." And I got into research and all those kind of things. But I owe him that because I loved academic surgery. As he loved teaching, teaching was really the thing that just, it just energized me so much. I know you're all family, most of you, at least. I am a member of your family, not by biology or DNA or anything like that, but because of friendship and brotherhood. Harold and I became excellent friends, and which lasted the rest of his life, and I hope a lot more of my life, that I can remember him and those good times that we had together and all the stuff we talked about. And I got to know the man too, playing golf with him. Everybody's alluded to his pre-shot routine. I would be remiss if I didn't say a little something about that pre-shot routine. Not so much as his manipulations. In fact, my son Tripp was on the golf team at Augusta College, which Harold supported tremendously. And they called him Wiggles. That was his nickname. And we played a lot of golf together out at North Augusta. And I always wanted to get Harold as my partner. And people would say, why do you want Harold as your partner? He's about a 20 handicapper. And I said, yeah, but at the end of the round, who's got the money? Because the opponents be watching Harold and all that. And he took, as I think everybody has said, it took a while to get all of the muscles in place and drive them crazy. And they'd get all nerved up and everything. And so at the end of the round, Harold was worth at least 3 to 5 shots, a 9. He really was. All right, speaking of golf, Brian, thanks for that one picture that I'm in up there that I did see when I walked up. I didn't realize I was that skinny. Wow, did we look good in those days? Talk about drinking beer. As Steve said, our back doors or backyards were adjacent to each other. And I had a garage and Harold had one. And I had an outside refrigerator. And one evening I was there and the dog started going a little nuts. I went out there and Harold's looking in my refrigerator. And hey, Harold, how you doing? Hey, you got any beer here? I've run out. It's Sunday evening. And I said, well, you help yourself in there. So he got a 6-pack. And then the next Monday, I went out there. 6-pack's been replaced after he's come home from work. Everything. That went on for all those years. Every Sunday, the dogs even quit getting excited because Harold's back there getting another 6-pack. And to this day, I've got a 6-pack of beer. I looked today in my refrigerator. I recognize the name of it. I never recognized the name of any of the beers that Harold drank. He and Hardy risked it. I think it had on it cheap. Well, see, you're laughing. I'm laughing because I'm happy and I am just joyful that Harold Moon was a part of my life because we had nothing but good times, happy times, joyful times, and a lot of laughter. When we're born, our Creator makes a big investment in us. And I'll tell you one thing, when God created Harold Moon, he got a return on his investment that's quantums. There's no telling how many angels in heaven right now are rejoicing because of Harold Moon's life. Harold, I'm so glad and happy for y'all that you were able to share that together because Harold was a good companion and y'all, I'm just so pleased with that. When I heard that y'all had gotten married, I was just ecstatic because Harold was not a loner. He loved people. He loved to be around folks. Well, wouldn't say that Harold was knocking down the doors at the church very often and everything, but he did. I did see him in church one time. I know he went to Sunday school when I think Alan Clarkson kind of pulled y'all in there. But when I was ordained on March the 21st in 2002, it was a very great solemn ceremony with a lot of pomp and circumstance. And we're processing in, and I'm all, what am I? I'm a pious, I guess would be the right word. I guess if that's correct. And I look up, and of course, you don't miss Harold when you're in a crowd. He stood, and he was actually taller than John Black, wasn't he? They're standing there together, and he looks at me, and he goes, he supported me. He was such a great friend. I miss it. We haven't been able to see each other in these last troubled times. But there was only one, and we thank God for giving him to us. So let's pray. God of grace and God of glory, we remember before you with all of these wonderful memories, our brother Harold. We thank you for giving him to us, his family and friends, to know and to love as a companion on our earthly pilgrimage. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death the gate of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our course on earth until by your call we are reunited with those who have gone before. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, thanks.
And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall and did it my way. I've loved.
It's technology you were talking about, right?
I did it all. I took the fall and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried. I've had my fill, my share of losing. And now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that. And may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has naught to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way. Oh, yes. Yes, I did. I did it my way.